We begin tonight in our own backyard with a story striking at the heart of the affordability crisis here in Lethbridge. In Alberta, the NDP, of course, has tabled the Bill 201. And this is referred to as the Protect Workers Pay Act in a new push to raise the provincial minimum wage. Alberta has been frozen at $15 an hour for over 7 years. It has fallen from the highest in the country to the very lowest. The new bill proposes a $1 increase each year for the next 3 years, reaching $18 an hour by October 2027. MLA Kathleen Ganley, who tabled the bill, told the Lethbridge Herald that affordability is the top concern for Albertans, stating, "We believe that people should be able to get by just working one job." The bill would also eliminate the controversial $13 an hour youth wage for students under 18 and introduce new tip protections that ensure gratuities go directly to the workers who earn them. This political debate comes as the real-world impact of inflation is hitting Lethbridge families hard. It's a stark reaction to this week's new federal budget. Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas released a statement highlighting just how dire the local situation has become. According to Thomas, food bank usage in Lethbridge is up a staggering 45.4% among adults and 150% among children. This federal budget is drawing split reactions from our local leaders. Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagen says he is maintaining a cautious optimism. In a statement, the mayor said he is encouraged by the national commitments of $115 billion for infrastructure and $25 billion for home building, adding he is hopeful that Lethbridge will be seriously considered for a fair share of those tax dollars. Now, MP Thomas, as noted, slammed the budget, calling it reckless spending and more broken promises. This divergence highlights a difficult political reality for our city. Municipal leaders, such as Mayor Hagen, must advocate for a fair share of federal infrastructure dollars that the region's own federal representative is actively campaigning against. In other City Hall news, Lethbridge City Council has successfully ratified a new 2-year collective agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Local 987. The agreement ensures stability for public transit in the Lethbridge area. And this week, the city unveiled a powerful new tribute to our veterans. A new veteran commemorative crosswalk was officially opened near the cenotaph. The designs features a soldier's silhouette inspired by a cenotaph statue. It includes the phrase, lest we forget, in English, "Nous nous souviendrons," in French, and significantly, and my apologies to the Blackfoot people, I will probably butcher this pronunciation, but I will try. It's Ihatasnai Pai. I'm sorry, I butchered that. My apologies to anyone with the Blackfoot tribe. I tried, but yeah, it is, I'd have to practice that a little. In any event, the Blood Tribe elder, Martin Heavyhead, interpreted the Blackfoot term as meaning "so that we know." Indigenous veteran Jeremy Plain Eagle who was at the ceremony, told reporters that he felt very proud seeing the language included, calling it a step together towards unity and remembering everybody. And on a final note, a special congratulations is in order to our colleagues here in Lethbridge at Jess TV and Jess FM. They have been just voted the #1 station in Lethbridge by the community. A huge and well-deserved achievement, and congratulations to all of the other program hosts, and of course, Jesse, our fearless leader. We now turn to provincial news, where the political pressure in Edmonton is ratcheting up. Premier Danielle Smith says her government has no plans at the moment to change Alberta's recall legislation. Her comments come after Elections Alberta officially gave the green light to 2 separate recall petitions targeting members of her UCP caucus. Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides and backbencher Angela Pitt. The Premier stated she is concerned that the petition drives are not using the legislation in good faith. She went further, accusing the citizen-led efforts of being an attempt to overthrow her government. Yes, it's typical talking points that you would expect to hear out of a Trump-type political framework in the U.S., but no, it is again just Danielle Smith showing her true colors. Using language like overthrow frames a legal democratic process as an illegitimate coup. This is a clear political strategy to discredit the petitioners before they can even gather the required signatures, raising the stakes from a local constituency issue to a direct challenge against her premiership. Citizens in those ridings now have 3 months to collect enough signatures to trigger a vote. At the same time, the Premier is fighting a battle on a second front, and that, of course, is organized labor. The Alberta government is now facing a coordinated wave of public sector unrest. This week, with a super majority of members of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees, 98% of nursing care members voted in favor of a strike. This follows a separate strike vote by LPNs and other healthcare aides. And on the education front, the Premier's use of the notwithstanding clause to force striking teachers back to work is now drawing criticism from outside of the political sphere. The Anglican Diocese of Edmonton has publicly questioned the move, injecting a moral and ethical argument into the heated dispute. And in a story connecting Alberta to one of the world's biggest stages, the election of New York City's new mayor is resonating here at home. Zoran Mamdani, the 34-year-old son of Ugandan Indian immigrants, is being hailed as a milestone for South Asian and Ugandan communities in Alberta. Former Edmonton Mayor Amarjit Sohi said the victory provides hope and reflection for communities in Canada who have been facing a rise in racism. Now, let's take a look across Canada for our headlines there. But before we do, let's thank our sponsor of this episode. Once again, it is Carey Movers Limited, Western Canada's favorite family-owned and operated moving company for over 2 decades. Carey Movers can be found online at www.karymovers.com. That's karymovers.com. They provide long-distance services throughout all Western Canadian provinces and, of course, local moves in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley regions as well. Now, nationally, let's move on to that. The federal government is on the road today to sell its first budget. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne are holding post-budget events to promote their new economic plan. The budget tabled on Tuesday calls for billions in new spending with a focus on clean energy, housing, and, of course, workers. But that spending comes with a significant political cost. Canada's top public servant has confirmed the budget will result in about 40,000 job cuts from the federal public service and the termination of some programs. The Carney government is making a high-stakes gamble that the long-term benefits of generational spending on housing and talent attraction will outweigh the immediate political damage of a massive deficit. Also, the deep cuts to the civil service. A key pillar of that plan is a new international talent attraction strategy. It includes $1.7 billion to recruit 1,000 international researchers and a new fast-track immigration pathway for H-1B visa holders from the United States who are facing new fees and restrictions. But the budget is already facing sharp criticism. Indigenous leaders are decrying what they call a lack of money for key reconciliation programs. The budget sales pitch was briefly overshadowed this morning by a surprise move on Parliament Hill. Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont has left the Conservative caucus to join the governing Liberals. D'Entremont was seen attending the Liberal caucus meeting this morning. Prime Minister Carney welcomed him, calling the new MP exceptionally valuable. A floor crossing is rare and powerful in terms of political events. For the Liberals, it is a major public relations victory, suggesting their Big Tent vision is working. For Conservatives, though, it is a significant blow, raising questions about the internal caucus unity. Now we turn to our global headlines, ladies and gentlemen. First to the Philippines, where a humanitarian crisis is unfolding. At least 66 people are dead after Typhoon Kalmagi slammed into the country. The typhoon has caused catastrophic flooding, with harrowing reports of entire communities being engulfed by water. In the Middle East, a fragile ceasefire in Gaza appears to be holding. Mediators report that Hamas has agreed to hand over the body of a hostage, a key development following days of intense strikes. And a quick update to that is that there are reports, even since that one, that several bodies have been exchanged between Israel and the Gaza region. In the United States, investigators are on the scene still of a cargo plane crash in Kentucky. The death toll of the crash at the UPS plane has now risen to 11. A preliminary probe is reportedly focused on a potential engine loss. Elsewhere in the United States, a court has halted the deportation of Mr. Vedam, an Indian origin man who was wrongfully jailed for 43 years. In India, there are celebrations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted the India women's cricket team to celebrate their historic victory in the 2025 Women's Cricket World Cup. Congratulations to all of those athletes that worked so hard to get there and brought back to India the World Cup of Cricket. In Mexico, a suspect has been arrested after an assault on Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum during a public event. And in Japan, Yamaha Motors has announced that it will showcase its new robotics transportation solutions, spanning from micron to kilometer scale, at the upcoming International Robot Exhibition in Tokyo. Now, once again, we are going to move on to our feature story tonight, and that is the concerns about safety on our highways across the nation. Before we get there, of course, we again want to make sure that we appreciate and thank our in-depth coverage sponsor on Primetime Live. It's made possible by Carey Movers Limited, Western Canada's best family-owned and operated long-distance moving company, also providing local moves in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley of British Columbia. With a dedicated fleet for long distance in all Western provinces and territories, you can find them at www.careymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y, movers.com. Now, as we continue, we're going to take a look at Highways of Risk, our special report into the crisis in Canadian trucking. It's one item from the federal budget that is drawing praise from an industry in crisis and opening up a massive investigation. The government has pledged $77 million to crack down on rampant systemic fraud within the trucking industry. This follows a year of horrific, record-breaking collisions on our highways. Tonight, we are dedicating the remainder of our broadcast to that story. Now, we put our lives in their hands every time we merge onto a highway. The drivers of the heavy trucks that move 90% of our consumer goods. We trust they are trained, qualified, and safe. Our investigation tonight reveals that trust is crucially and critically broken. We begin with the official 2023 data from Transport Canada. Last year, 1,964 people were killed on our roads, the highest number of fatalities in a decade. The number of serious injuries requiring hospitalization also hit a 5-year high at 9,261 individuals. This is not a random spike. This is a trend. And hidden inside those numbers is the real story. According to analysis of national statistics, 399 of those 1,964 deaths, 1 in every 5, involved a commercial motor vehicle. Now, let's take a look at the hard data, folks. In 2023, total road fatalities were 1,964, and that was an increase of 1.7%, the highest in 10 years. Total serious injuries were 9,261, up 0.9% and the highest in 5 years. Fatalities involving a commercial vehicle. This is staggering at 399, And that accounts for 20.3% of all fatalities. We were not able to bring up or find the data to correlate the exact increased percentage on that data for the fatalities involving commercial vehicles. However, this data for 2024 is already looking worse. In Quebec, data from the Provincial Auto Insurance Board shows that of the 379 road deaths last year, 100 involved a heavy vehicle. That's in Quebec alone. That's a staggering 35% increase over 2023. The situation is so dire, Quebec's chief coroner has just ordered a public inquiry into fatal collisions involving heavy trucks. How did we get here? How did our highways become so dangerous? For the past 6 months, our team has investigated this industry. We found the answer is a story of systemic fraud, criminal corruption, and corporate race to the bottom that has compromised safety at every single level. This is a story about how a driver's license can be bought, how corporations can profit from illegality, and how a complete breakdown in enforcement is killing Canadians. It's the scandal, part 1 of our series here, of the license mills. The frontline highway safety is supposed to be the driving school. In 2019, after the tragic Humboldt Broncos crash, a new national standard was created, and it's called MELT, also known as the Mandatory Entry Level Training. It was supposed to guarantee that every new driver had at least 103.5 hours of training. It varied slightly from coast to coast, depending on the province or territory. Instead, it has created a billion-dollar black market for fraudulent licenses. We'll begin in Ontario, where the Ministry of Transportation, or the MTO, was forced to suspend the licenses of at least 185 commercial drivers who, in the ministry's own words, obtained them dishonestly. That is not it, though. They are expecting over 1,000 more to be questioned and potentially suspended. This is not just an administrative error. It is organized crime. This year, 2 Indian origin operators, Gurvinder and Gurpreet Singh, were sentenced for running a massive fraud scheme. They charged students between $4,000 and $5,000. Then they paid off insiders to upload false information into the ministry's database, certifying students had completed the MELT program when they had not. They also paid an interpreter, Hanifa Kolkar, and they were paying this individual up to $400 per student to help them cheat on written knowledge tests. As one veteran driver examiner told researchers, this has been going on for 25 years. He said he personally witnessed the interpreter translating the answers in their Punjab language. The MELT program, designed to increase safety, inadvertently created a new criminal enterprise, making the certificate of a mandatory but poorly policed requirement. The government created a bottleneck that criminals could charge money to bypass. If the problem in Ontario is private corruption, the problem in Quebec is even more shocking. It's public. Our investigation found that corruption goes inside the provincial licensing agency itself. Last week, Quebec's Anti-Corruption Squad, the UPAC, announced charges against 6 individuals, including 2 former employees of the SAAQ. That's the province's Auto Insurance and Licensing Board. The allegation is that they ran a scheme to sell more than 2,000 fake driver's licenses. When the police raided the suspects, they seized over $1.1 million in Canadian and American cash. Also charged is Mohammed Tekrul Islam, the owner of Reflex Driving School, who allegedly worked with the SAAQ employees to coordinate this fraud. This is a catastrophic failure of public trust. It's not a private license mill trying to fool the government. This is the government's own staff allegedly selling safety to the highest bidder. This provides a direct, shocking explanation for how 2,000 potentially untrained drivers ended up on the road, and it's a direct link to that 35% spike in heavy truck fatalities in Quebec alone. In response to its own crisis, Ontario has proposed Bill 60, the Fighting Delays Building Faster Act. Tucked inside is a plan to stop licensed tourism. It will require residency verification, visa and work permit verification, and critically, a 1-year waiting period of Canadian driving experience before anyone can even apply for a Class A tractor trailer license. In BC, it's referred to as a Class 1. But the fraud is already moving west. An investigation in Alberta recently shut down 13 trucking companies, including 7 chameleon carriers. These are entities that evade oversight by simply changing their name and re-registering. Officials at Saskatchewan's SGI are now bracing for these illegal operators to simply cross the border and set up shop. But at the very same time, SGI is under fire from the Saskatchewan trucking industry for a new program that exempts temporary foreign workers in the agricultural sector from the MELT training entirely. The Trucking Association warns that this puts economic demands ahead of safety. This reveals a critical failure in our national system. Provincial control over licensing has created a game of whack-a-mole. Ontario's crackdown pushes bad actors to Alberta. Alberta's crackdown pushes them to Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan's exemptions create a new legal loophole that undermines the entire national safety standard. Then we also turn to look at what's referred to as driver ink, and this is another disease of the system. But why, we ask, is there such a massive demand for fraudulent licenses? Well, it's because a new illegal business model has taken over Canadian trucking. It demands a constant supply of cheap, exploitable, and often untrained drivers, and they are referring to it as driver ink. Here is how the scheme works. A trucking company hires a driver, but instead of putting them on payroll as an employee, they force the driver to register as a corporation, a driver Inc. Now, the company then pays this corporation with no deductions. This illegally misclassifies the driver as an independent contractor, even though they are, for all intents and purposes, an employee. The motive is simple: tax evasion. By doing this, the company avoids paying all employer costs, payroll taxes, employment insurance, Canada Pension Plan contributions, and most importantly, workers' compensation premiums. The Canadian Trucking Alliance, or CTA, estimates this gives illegal drivers Inc. and their operators a 35% cost advantage over legal compliant businesses. This isn't just cheating the driver, it's cheating the public. The CTA warns this scheme is costing Canadian government over $5 billion a year in lost revenue. The CTA president has called it a full-blown crisis of compliance, road safety, drug trafficking, human rights abuses, rampant labor law, and tax fraud. It's been allowed to become out of control. This model targets the most vulnerable. Our investigation shows the primary victims are temporary foreign workers and new immigrants. The link between Driver Inc. and driver exploitation is undeniable. While the trucking industry makes up just 17% of federally regulated workforce, it accounts for 85% of all violations of the Canada Labour Code. Things such as unpaid wages, illegal deductions, and wrongful terminations. And here's the critical connection to safety. Companies that cut corners on taxes and labor also cut corners on safety. Testimony given to the House of Commons Transport Committee described Driver Inc. as drivers who lack basic knowledge, like how they open the truck hoods or pouring excuse me, sorry about that, folks. They lack the knowledge of how to open their truck hoods or pouring windshield wiper fluid on the ground to gain traction. As one executive told the committee, these drivers are dangerous. They don't respect driving hours and they're all underpaid. The federal government has known about this since at least 2011, when it placed a moratorium on the T4A enforcement, effectively legalizing the Driver Inc. model by promising not to punish it. After a decade of pressure, the 2025 federal budget finally promises action. It allocates $77 million over 4 years for the Canada Revenue Agency and Employment and Social Development Canada to finally lift that moratorium. The money will fund a new compliance program and allow the CRA and the ESDC to share information to identify worker misclassification. The two crises, license fraud and Driver Inc., are feeding each other in a vicious, devastating cycle. First, the Driver Inc. model creates a massive demand for exploitable drivers who will accept illegal under-the-table pay. Second, this demand fuels the license mills and the public corruption, which pump out thousands of untrained drivers to fill these illegal jobs. Third, this flood of unqualified illegal operators drives down wages and conditions for everyone, forcing the legitimate drivers out of the industry. This, of course, turns and creates a driver shortage. The industry then uses this shortage to lobby the government for more temporary foreign workers. And those new temporary foreign workers are the primary targets of the Driver Inc. scheme. And the cycle begins all over again, only this time it is worse. Now we see, of course, the human toll and the empty seat. The combination of rampant fraud and systemic exploitation has destroyed a once proud profession. This isn't just a driver shortage, it's an exodus. The industry projects a gap of 25,000 drivers by this year and 55,000 by 2035. But what our investigation found isn't a shortage of people, it's a shortage of people willing to work in these conditions. We've monitored online forums where drivers speak freely. One post this year sums up the despair. A 34-year-old man in Ontario facing a layoff asked, "Is trucking still a viable career option in Canada?" The responses were brutal. Drivers cited the influx of cheap foreign labor or temporary foreign workers are driving wages way down. They talked about subpar working conditions and struggling just to make $25 an hour. This is firsthand testimony that is the human consequence of Driver Inc. data. That 35% cost advantage is not just a number, it's a direct pay cut for every legitimate driver on the road. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, or the CCOHS, warned that long-haul drivers face unique challenges: long hours, stress, irregular schedules, and prolonged sitting. They face a greater risk of heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. They are not just fighting illegal operators, they are fighting a job that is, by its nature, difficult and dangerous. The more important finding from our investigation is this: the legitimate trucking industry is begging for more enforcement, not less. The Canadian Trucking Alliance, the Traffic Injury Research Foundation, and provincial groups are all sounding the alarm. They see the illegal operators, the Driver Inc. scheme, and the license mill graduates as an existential threat that is destroying their business and their reputation. As is the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association. It told Parliament, "If you follow the law, you lose. If you cheat, you win." Right now in Canada's trucking industry, the cheaters are winning, they said. They are the ones demanding better training standards and enforcement of the law before the entire industry collapses into a low-wage, high-risk black market. Now, in conclusion to this, ladies and gentlemen, the crisis on our highways is not an accident. It is the predictable results of a decade of non-enforcement, corporate greed, and catastrophic failure of provincial licensing bodies. The $77 million federal crackdown is a start, but it is 14 years late. The public inquiry in Quebec is a necessary step, but it is a reaction to 100 deaths. As long as the Driver Inc. model is more profitable than compliance, and as long as commercial driver's license can be bought from a corrupt school or a corrupt public official instead of earned, the risk to us all remains. Primetime Live's investigative journalism is supported by Carry Movers Limited, family owned and operated. Carry Movers provides long distance moves in the Western Canadian provinces and up as far as the Yukon. You can also look for Carry Movers for local moving needs in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. You can find them online at www.carrymovers.com. That's www.karymovers.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's show is not live. I've had to pre-record the show today as I am on a film set this evening and unable to be there live with you in the studio. And that is why it's a bit shorter tonight, and also why the phone lines are not open today. But again, I would like to send a special congratulations to all of my colleagues at Jess TV and Jess FM for an achievement well received and well deserved. It is, of course, being voted the top station in Lethbridge again in 2025. Congratulations to everybody, and especially to Jesse, our team leader, and of course, the founder of Jess TV and Jess FM. Welcome, everyone, to the world of winning a back-to-back championship, we'll call it. Just because the Jays can't call a championship this year, we'll do it for them. But in any event, folks, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Primetime Live here on Jess FM and Jess TV. If you have any comments, by all means, please feel free to either put them here in the comment section on this platform, email us, or, of course, you can always call in and leave a voicemail on the studio phone line, which is 604-385. What is our new studio number? It's the Vancouver-based studio, folks, 385-5093. So again, 604-385-5093. Feel free to leave a voicemail, and if you'd like us to use it on air, by all means, let us know that in the message. Other than that, we won't air any messages that are left on the phone to keep your confidentiality there. But in any event, folks, make sure you tune in next week. We look forward to seeing you there, and we will look forward to a big announcement next week. You'll have to tune in to find out what that'll be.